Okay, welcome everyone. It is an honor to be here. Can you all see my, oh, you can see my Facebook page. I'm trying to go live on Facebook while I do this presentation. There we are. Oh my goodness, it's working. Technology is in my favor today. I will take it. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and get my video started here. And we'll see if we're in business. Let's see. Can you all see my screen? Yay! Hi, Anne. Okay, awesome. Y'all can see. I'm going to get my chat screen up. You can. Okay, awesome. Let me get back to the presentation on my end. It is an honor to be here with you all today. Thank you for taking the time. Happy Thursday. Gosh, so much to say, and I just want to first of all introduce myself for those of you who are not familiar with me yet. My name is Kelly Simants, and y'all, I can't find my presentation on here. Hold on. This is hilarious. Here we are. Okay, I'm back. There we are. Okay, now where's my video? Bear with me. I'm just an old lady over here trying to, there we are. Okay. Hi. Okay, so my name is Kelly Simants. I'm a senior HR consultant, and I've been in HR for over 20 years. I have been in so many different seats in the HR world, and now I'm a consultant. So I help businesses with their hiring needs, with their HR strategy, and I help individuals on a resume writing basis. I help with cover letters and career coaching services, LinkedIn profiles, all sorts of things. And so I'm just excited to be here because I know that a lot of you might be in transition or thinking about what's next for you in your career. And so I really am honored to be able to help. A few housekeeping tips before we start with the presentation. There's a chat room, so if you haven't been familiar with this function yet, there's a chat room. It looks like a lot of you are already using it. Hello, you can type your questions in as you have them. There will also be a section at the end where you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. And at the same time, I also have someone from our team, Jessica Cole, who is a panelist with me, and she will be able to answer questions as they arrive as well. And so we'll go ahead and get started here. We have a lot to cover in a short amount of time. And I want to talk about resume writing tips. I want to help you guys understand the trends with resumes and how to get through an applicant tracking system. It's super critical these days to know how to do that with your resume. Many people I'm talking to have not written a resume in 10, 15 years. It's totally normal and it's okay. You're going to learn some tips today that will help you to really set you up for success and to understand what the trends are now with recruiting. We'll talk about cover letters, why they're important, what I recommend with them, and your social media presence, how important that also is. I want to talk to you guys about a few interviewing tips, and of course I could do just a session on all interviewing tips by themselves, but for today I want to just give you a few tips. I want to talk about how to find the perfect job, some tips there, and then some recruiting tips just to connect you with ideas for how to work with your job search right now, especially everything going on with COVID. Erin is asking, will the recording be sent out for you to refer back to at a later date? Absolutely, it's being recorded now. So thanks for asking that, Erin. So let's jump right in. I had posted this little picture of this little man when I was promoting this webinar, so you may have seen this, and I think it sums up a lot of how we all might be feeling right now about the resume writing process, or just, how do you find a job in today's economy? And so I want to help you guys understand how to demystify this whole process. And we're going to jump right in. Here are some do's. I highly recommend that you avoid using third person. You use third person and you avoid saying, I did this. I see a lot of resumes that say, I did this, this, and this, and they use that tense throughout the resume. And instead, you should be reading a resume as if you're writing a resume as if you're reading about someone else, okay? That's very important. It just makes you look more professional, so take the I out of it. You also want to create a professional email address. If you don't have one, it's easy to create, right? And so make sure that it's something that a recruiter would, want to contact you at. You'd be surprised at how many unprofessional email addresses I do see on resumes. So make sure it's professional. You want to also fill in gaps where there might be a lack of experience, or maybe you've had a gap in, between jobs. Could you potentially have a volunteer role that you could take on in between gigs, or in between the time that you're working now versus, when you land a job? Most likely you can volunteer, and you'll build a skill set through volunteering. Internships are great also for, filling in a gap where there's a lack of experience. So maybe it's something that you want to, check out a different industry and you can pursue something different. Then you could look at a potential internship. You might start a small business on the side, and that could also be something that you add to your resume. During this time, especially, build a skill set that you can add to your resume as something that might be compelling to a potential employer. I just talked to an individual yesterday who mentioned that a lot of the companies he's been interviewing with or looking to interview with ask for a bilingual candidate. And he's going to start learning Spanish in his downtime. So things like that are so important right now to be focusing on, because some of you have the time and the capability to be able to learn new skills or competencies that you can focus on. This is really, really important. You want to ensure that you include keywords from job descriptions. And what I mean by this is, when you look at a job posting online, typically it'll have a requirements of the position type of section, or what we're looking for in a candidate. I recommend having as many keywords as possible in your resume that job description has listed in the job posting. The reason for that is that most applicant tracking systems nowadays that companies use are going to be screening your resume before anyone ever touches it from a human presence. So they're called resume robots, and they're great for the recruiter, they're great for the company and the hiring manager because they weed through thousands of resumes. But it is a deficit when you're a candidate, because you don't know sometimes that you're missing keywords, and so your resume may not make it through the applicant tracking system. So it's super critical that you have as many keywords as possible in your resume that is in the job posting. People ask me all the time, do I have to have several versions of my resume then? Yes, and you can have a template resume that you work from and customize it for every job. And typically just the top section should be customized, and also adding in, embedding some keywords that are in each job. Takes a little bit more time, but it's worth it in the end if it gives you a greater chance of getting through the applicant tracking system. So keywords are super, super important. Formatting is also a big deal. So as a recruiter, if I'm hiring for a company and I see 1,000 resumes in an hour, which is oftentimes the case, I'm scanning, trying to quickly find the right people. I'm looking for resumes that are clean, that are concise, that have white space. If it is tiny font and it's all jumbled, I'm not going to read it. I'm just going to move to the next one. That's just how the reality is of recruiting. You want to keep it clean. You want to have enough white space. You also want to keep it to a maximum of 2 pages. There's an old wives' tale that says that you only have to have your resume in 1 page. So you have to cram everything in and it's just 1 page. Absolutely not these days. In fact, if you're someone with experience, you've had 10, 15 years in the industry or in the workforce, you want to have 2 pages so that you can accurately describe what you've been doing in those roles. And it gives you that opportunity to also have enough keywords in your resume that it'll hopefully get through the system. So 2 pages is ideal. 3 is too long in my opinion. That's my personal perspective, and I know a lot of recruiters would agree with me. So definitely keep it to 2 pages max if you can. So the next section I want to talk about is creating strong action verbs. I read a lot of resumes that have passive language. So they'll say, I used a system, or I was responsible for this, this, and this. Instead, let's wordsmith it a little bit. And instead of saying, for example, I conducted a survey, how about I spearheaded a survey? Do you see how different that is? Ordered materials, instead of just, a passive, oh, I just ordered materials, you actually procured materials. It's a much stronger way of explaining your role and what you did and what you accomplished if you tweak some of the action verbs. Started a new process. Instead, how about pioneered a new process? So you see there's a pattern to these verbs, and they really do make a difference in how you come across as a candidate when you have a stronger verb embedded throughout your resume. This list is amazing, and I'll send this presentation out to you guys afterwards, so you'll be able to pull from this. But there is someone that's been in the HR world that created this list of amazing verbs for us to pull from. And it's based on, you know, if you're in an administrative function, maybe you're in research or analysis, a creative designer, all these different words that you can use in your resume. So this is a great cheat sheet. Thank you, Janelleology, for creating this. And you can see here too, like if you've been in a people management position, there's a manage lead type of language here with verbs, a technical role, all sorts of really great descriptive verbs that you can use. Let's talk about some don'ts, okay? There are a lot of things I see in resumes that people just honestly don't know they shouldn't be doing anymore. So for anyone that's been in a role that hasn't been in corporate America, let's say you might be military, you want to avoid using acronyms that won't translate in corporate America. That's really important because especially with the applicant tracking systems, they're not going to be able to understand or translate those acronyms. And so you want to make sure that you're translating them in a way that makes sense. So for example, let's say you led a Army unit or something like that. Well, in reality, what you want to translate to corporate is you were in a leadership role, right? And so talk about those leadership skills that you had in that function in the Army. So make sure that you're not using acronyms that won't translate. You also want to avoid including your very first job from 1995. And instead, what you want to do is create an other experience section in your resume towards the end where you list out the job, the title, and you don't even have to include the date. And why I say this is because unfortunately age discrimination still does happen, and there's a tendency sometimes to overlook people who may, you know, include their very first jobs with the dates. So it's just not necessary. It's also not very relevant to, you know, be looking at jobs that were from 30 years ago or whatnot. So you just want to include an additional experience section, and that takes care of making sure you still preserve your experience, but you summarize it in a way that's succinct in your resume. You also want to avoid listing out dates for the education section, again, because of what I mentioned with age discrimination. It's just not necessary. I will say if you're a recent graduate, however, and you want to explain, you know, the reason that you've only had maybe, you know, 6 months of employment or just are coming out of an internship, then you would want to list the date for your education so that it makes sense to the recruiter that you are a recent graduate. Otherwise, it's really not necessary to include the dates anymore. Another thing not to do is include your home address, and this is why. With seriously crazy amounts of identity theft going on in the recruiting world, it's just not necessary. If a recruiter needs your home address, they can contact you to get the home address if they're needing to send you an offer letter by mail or whatnot. But especially when you're submitting a resume to an applicant tracking system online, you definitely want to avoid using your home address. You also want to avoid fitting everything in one page, like I talked about before, not necessary. So make sure that you're creating enough space and explaining your positions and your accomplishments really well. And this is a question that comes up a lot. Do I submit a Word version via these applicant tracking systems, or do I submit a PDF? My recommendation is a Word document because some systems are still not up to speed technology-wise, that they'd be able to read a PDF. It often gets jarbled. And so I always recommend a Word document. Now, if you're emailing someone, say you have a lead at a company and you want to email them your resume, definitely send a PDF. So that's the difference. With the PDF, you know, the formatting will come through great and everything will be fine in an email. So that's what I would recommend there. Other don'ts, using tiny font, writing your resume as if it were your job description. You want to avoid doing that because you want to show accomplishments and data, any process improvements you've made. If you're in sales, of course, you want to show a lot of data related to numbers and meeting and exceeding targets, things like that. So you want to write it different than if it were your plain job description. So make sure that it's not just, you know, copying and pasting what you were doing in your job description, but you're actually showing quantifiable results. Avoid using tables, crazy fonts, tons of images and graphics. There are a lot of really cool templates that do exist for resumes, but the problem sometimes with them is that when you send them through an applicant tracking system, the system doesn't recognize the tables and the graphics, and it spits it out. So I always avoid, creating the pretty graphic designer version of a resume. And instead, if you have the opportunity, you can email that to someone if and when, that's appropriate. I also recommend not including your photo. Again, people ask all the time, do I include it? Do I not? And the answer I give is not, because you want to make sure that you're also not setting yourself up for any potential discrimination. Unfortunately, that can still happen in the workplace, and so there's just really no need to include a photo. Certainly, you can have a LinkedIn profile with your photo, and that's appropriate, but I definitely would keep it off your resume. Oh, I'm frozen. Oh no. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Oh, shoot. Oh, you can hear me. Okay. Can you see me now? Oh, good. Okay. Sorry about that. Must have had a bad connection for a second. Okay, good. Here we are. So we're going to move on to an executive summary. Now, this is something at the top that I highly recommend. It doesn't matter the level or the role of the position that you're trying to attain. I recommend having an executive summary at the top of your resume for a couple of reasons. You can create your resume, like I said, and then customize it. And that top section, when I'm a recruiter and I'm looking at your resume, I have 3 to 6 seconds that I'm spending on your resume. I'm not going to probably spend 5 minutes unless I lock in and I really want to read through it all. So what you're trying to do is capture that recruiter's attention in 3 to 6 seconds, literally. So this is an example of a summary that an individual had in their resume, and you can see the difference. Before, they were talking about how they were highly motivated, goal-oriented, naturally competitive, experience with many facets of business operations, strategic project and marketing in both private and public companies. And what I did was tweaked it to be a stronger presentation of the skill set, of the competencies, of what this person's passions were. And it's a much stronger way of positioning this individual in the marketplace. You'll see there's a bunch of keywords in here now that weren't before. So they wanted to pursue customer success as their next career. It's what they had been in. But you'll notice in the old version, there was no mention of customer success. There was no mention of leading a team. And this person had incredible experience. And so really, positioning yourself with strength is so important. And feel free to, take this as an example and leverage it in your own resume. It just keeps freezing when you're talking. Good now. Okay. Oh, sorry, you guys. I'm sorry I'm freezing. I hope it's not with a crazy face. So this is the executive summary. Again, at the top, right underneath your name, your phone number, your email, and your LinkedIn profile, I would put your executive summary. Okay, let's talk about keywords. Again, keywords are, I can't stress this enough. If you have ever applied for a job and you received an automatic response saying, thank you, Kelly, for applying, unfortunately, you're not a fit for this role, and you literally just applied for the job, you're thinking, how in the world could someone have reviewed my resume so quickly and I already got a notification that I'm not, a fit? Well, it's because they're resume robots that are working behind the scenes to spit your resume out if, you're not a good fit. So keywords are important. I can't stress it enough. You want to have a high match rate with the keywords in your resume versus what the system is going to be asking for. So recruiters will put in the job description or in the back end of the system the keywords they're looking for. And if they're not in your resume, you're likely going to get those rejection notices. So, okay, good. No crazy faces. Thank you, Lisa. Formatting, again, is important. It's important not only for the applicant's tracking reasons to make sure your resume gets through the system, but it's visually important because you're trying to stand out. You're trying to, be among the sea of candidates and really make a difference. And so, like I said, not with any crazy graphics, not with any photos or anything like that, but you want to make sure that you're writing your resume in a way that's compelling, that it's interesting, and that you're, creating those metrics embedded throughout your resume that we talked about with some data and numbers. Okay, let's talk about cover letters next. So keep them short and concise. I see a lot of cover letters that are way too long. They might be 2 or 3 pages going on and on and on about all the reasons that they'd be a good fit. And honestly, again, I'm going to look at that cover letter and scan it, and within 3 seconds, I'm going to know if I want to keep reading it or not. So make sure it's really concise. You also want to customize based on the job description, craft a cover letter for every single job you apply for. I know that sounds so daunting, but it's important. I recently hired someone just because of their cover letter. Of course, not just because they had the competencies and they were the right culture fit and all the things, but the reason that we selected them for the interview initially was based on this incredible cover letter they had written. And so it really can help you stand out, especially right now with so many people that are vying for the same jobs. I definitely recommend. It can't hurt. There's no reason not to create a cover letter, and so always err on the side of submitting one. It also gives you a chance to show your personality a little bit. Resumes don't always allow that opportunity for you to talk about your story. And so, for example, if you're wanting to change industries or change your career, you can talk about the skill set you have and why, let's say you've been an event planner and now you're going to pursue a project management role in a corporate firm. You can talk about all of the reasons that you're set up for success because you have this amount of experience as an event planner, and now you're going to, be able to put that to play in a corporate environment, managing all the vendors and managing all the relationships and budgets and task lists and everything that comes with being a project manager. So cover letters allow you that opportunity to talk and explain yourself. And what I also recommend is writing them towards the company culture. So look at the company's mission statement online, look at their people section, and understand what they're looking for in candidates. You can often really easily tell what they're looking for by just checking out a few things on their site and speak to their corporate values. You also want to make sure to spell check. This goes for your resume too. I can't tell you how many times I unfortunately see spelling errors, and they're avoidable. So spell check and also have a second set of eyes. Really, go through with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that all errors are potentially out of your resume before you submit. Okay, let's talk about your social media presence. So especially right now, who's not on social media all the time because we're stuck at home a lot still, and it's our way of connecting, right? So there's heavy social media usage, and we want to make sure that your accounts are all professional. Check your Instagram, your Facebook, your Twitter, your LinkedIn, and ensure that there's not anything that could potentially steer a former or a future employer away from you. Things that are inappropriate could be vulgar language or things that are just so controversial that could be polarizing. There's no need. So you can set those posts to private, or you can remove them from your Facebook or Twitter. Also, Google your name. It's really interesting what you can find exists online about you, and make sure your online presence is professional. There might be things that you, have been featured on in the past and you're not in that industry anymore and you'd prefer that it's taken down. Great. Contact the owner of that blog or site or whatnot and have them take the post down about you if it doesn't make sense for you anymore, or it would be confusing to a potential employer. Let's talk about LinkedIn profiles next. So you want to ensure that your profile mirrors your resume with dates, with accomplishments, and if possible, include a professional headshot. Now, you don't have to go out and have a professional photographer do this, but what I mean by that is have someone take your picture in an outfit similar to this, right? So you have, you're put together and it's not just a selfie you took when you were at a restaurant, for example. So it's something professional that you can convey in the marketplace. You also want to create a compelling about section that has those strong keywords in the about section. Super important because you want to also attract recruiters with those keywords. And a lot of recruiters use LinkedIn now. And what you do is you set keywords based on demographic and where the job is. And if you're a candidate that has the keywords in your LinkedIn profile, I have a much greater chance of finding you if you've made sure that those keywords are in your about section. You also want to make sure to connect with everybody possible that you can that makes sense. So reach out to people that are in potential companies you want to, apply for. Reach out to recruiters. Get in groups. There are so many LinkedIn groups right now that you can be a part of. And I think this is going to be here for the long haul, where we're doing virtual networking as opposed to large group networking. And so definitely get in the LinkedIn groups. And that's a way to meet people that you might never have met before, all across the country, internationally. I need to do a better job of that myself, and it's something that we all need to carve out time, like 20 minutes a day, just to spend in LinkedIn, connecting, reaching out to people, introducing yourself. You never know who knows someone, right? And so it's super important to just keep connecting, especially now. If you're wanting recruiters to find you, there is a setting that you can make sure is turned on for that option. And there's also a setting that you can turn on that is for everybody to be able to find you on LinkedIn. So just know that those settings are available, and you might need to change them based on where you're at with your recruiting process right now. And then you can upload images, projects, articles you've written. That's really cool, especially for creatives. I see a lot of creative friends on here. You can upload, places you've been published, work you've done, and that's a really great way to reflect your work online. You want to also request and give recommendations. That's really important, because as a recruiter, I'm looking at a profile, and if I see, wow, this person has 12 amazing recommendations from colleagues, from former managers, that says a lot, right? And so you want to request a recommendation from someone, and then in return, you can give one back to them. And so they do matter, just know that. For anyone that's military, if you're transitioning from the military, make sure those acronyms, again, are in a context, even on LinkedIn, that will make sense to the civilian population that may not understand those acronyms. Okay, interviewing tips. So you've got the resume, you've got the cover letter, you've got your LinkedIn, and then you get the interview call, and you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't interviewed in 15 years. How does this work these days? So people ask, first of all, this isn't on my slide, but people ask, what do I wear to an interview these days? And unless you're working for a super conservative bank or something that's in the financial world where you're expected to wear a suit every day, maybe it's a sales executive type of position, you can certainly wear something like this, right? A nice blouse, slacks, a button-down shirt for guys. If you showed up, to an interview in a full suit these days, it's not expected. And so just know that it's a little bit more relaxed than if you were interviewing, even 10 years ago. Definitely no nylons. I was joking with a friend of mine that we used to have to wear nylons to interviews. So that is not necessary. So let's get back to what you want to do to prepare for the interview. I recommend bringing 5 examples of challenges that you've experienced in the workplace, and come up with those examples that you can draw from. Oftentimes your heart's racing, you're a little bit nervous in an interview. It's 100% common. And so what helps is to come prepared with a portfolio. It can be something like this, where you just literally have a notebook and your questions written down for the interviewer, which we'll talk in a bit, and then the examples of challenges so that you can pull from that. It's interesting when you're put on the spot, sometimes you forget about some of the most important work that you've done, and you want to make sure that you can convey that in an interview. Study everything you can about the company, the people you're interviewing with. Like I said, look at their about page, talk about the culture. You want to show that you've spent time understanding them and their culture, and that it's unique. Every company has a DNA, right? And so you want to show them that you would fit in with that DNA, that you'd love to be part of that. Be sure to ask them thoughtful questions. I cannot stress this enough, you guys. So come prepared with questions that will show that you're not only intelligent to be thinking of these questions, but that you have a vested interest. So what's the career path for this role the next 2 to 5 years? What is the department? How does it impact the company overall from a strategic perspective? I love this next question. It's my favorite. What would you say success looks like in the first 30, 60, 90 days for this role? And then what is the company culture like? So you want to just ask as many questions as you can without, overextending the questions. You don't want to come prepared with 20 questions, but I recommend 3 to 5, and that gives you the opportunity to show that you have a vested interest, like I said. Okay, so where in the world do we find jobs these days? There are thankfully so many different avenues than there used to be. The first I want to talk about is staffing firms. So there are different recruiters and they differ by state and city, of course, with what they focus on. There are certainly firms that focus on finance and accounting jobs. There are firms that focus on just IT. There are firms that do just admin. There are executive recruiters for more senior level roles. So understand that each market has their own type of niche recruiter, and so you can do a Google search and find a couple companies, give them a call, and if you can't tell what they do from their website, ask them if they know someone in the project management space and whatnot. So just know that right now, especially as you're vying for these different jobs with thousands potentially of different people, that recruiters can really help bridge the gap between the candidate and the company. There's no fee to the employee. The firm and the company have the agreement together. So that's a great way. The next awesome way to find jobs is actually via LinkedIn as well. This is probably the #1 site that most recruiters use now to find mid to senior level candidates. So it's very important, like I said, to have your LinkedIn presence updated, dust it off, and connect with people. The other thing that people don't know about sometimes with LinkedIn, there's an alert that you can create for jobs that you're looking for. And so you can set the alerts to be emailed to you, which is great because then you find out about those openings immediately when they happen versus, maybe you see something on LinkedIn a week later and you're like, dang it, I should have applied sooner for that job. These alerts are awesome because they'll send you, project management role in Dallas. And so it'll send a whole list of the jobs that have just been posted. Indeed does the same thing. It is a great resource for people that are candidates and also for businesses that are hiring. And so you can set alerts with Indeed, with ZipRecruiter. And there's a bazillion different sites. These just tend to be my top 3 that I recommend people focus on because it can be really overwhelming as a job seeker to figure out where to find the openings. Network. It's hard in person right now, but there are definitely ways to do that virtually. And so get involved with associations. I'm part of something called Dallas HR here, and we're doing a virtual networking session today online. And so, there are still ways that people are connecting and getting in front of each other, getting your name out. So definitely look for those opportunities in your city. You can also set a daily goal for submitting your resume. I highly recommend this if you're actively job searching. It can get real easy to be complacent and just, kind of have that woe is me attitude, or this is, just such a pain. It's hard. I'm with the millions of other unemployed people or whatever, right? Treat it like a job. Treat your job search like a job and have a spreadsheet that you track all the positions you're applying for, all the leads that you have, and work those leads every day. You're sitting down at your computer to attack, different opportunities that you might find. So I can't recommend that enough because it's worth it in the end if you put the hard work into it. Okay, some recruiting tips. So recruiters are simply only one approach. Like I mentioned, they can be super helpful right now, especially, and also it's not the only way to find a job. So don't think that you have to have a recruiter to find a job these days. It's just one approach. And like I said, each staffing firm typically has a niche in the market. So know which companies you want to pursue if you are going to go that route. And then do your research too. So really understand what it is in your industry or your market that would be good for you to connect with from the recruiting side. And then finally, the hard work and time that you put into revamping your resume will pay off, I promise. It takes a lot of patience, a lot of initiative to update your resume and to really get it, to that place where it is going to be different than everybody else in the marketplace. But it's going to pay off. So I can't stress enough that the time you do invest in, really cleaning up your resume and getting it ready to put yourself to market is going to be worthwhile. Let's see here. Oh yeah. Okay. So our webinar special for anyone who does need help. If you've watched this webinar, we'll upgrade your resume writing package complimentary. We want to do as much as we can to help. And so that's one thing that we're offering people that are watching this webinar. And so now we have time for more questions. Did I miss any? Let's see here. Oh, Sarah, yes, so excited for the LinkedIn info may need help, sure thing. And I'll start to put out more LinkedIn tips on our Facebook page too. For if you guys aren't following us yet, it's Resume Writing Nevada HR Team, and so I'd love to offer more tips on LinkedIn too. Deborah, you're so welcome. I'm glad it was informative. What other questions do y'all have? We have time. I'm thankful that we have time. I sometimes get to the point where we don't have enough time for Q&A. So, oh, yours is in the Q&A. Let's see. Oh my gosh, there's an actual Q&A section. Sorry. Oh, you guys, I'm still learning. Okay, do you have templates available to use? Yes, I need inspiration for how to format my non-existent resume. Absolutely. So, and that is something that, I need to figure out if we can offer a template that we put on our page as something to purchase as a download. But I'm certainly happy to share an example with anybody that would be interested. Because yes, inspiration is key for how to format a resume that's not existing, right? How do you explain the work gap to have and raise children? Oh, Wendy, that's an excellent question. So oftentimes in the cover letter, that's a great place to explain that you have, decided that your family decided years ago that you were going to, stay at home and raise children, and now you're excited to transition back into the workforce. And the skills that you've gained as a volunteer or whatnot have enabled you to get to the place where you're ready to have the energy now to give back to a company. So I can help you offline if you're interested in figuring out how to navigate that. But the great thing nowadays is it's super common for women to take gaps, men to take gaps even in their work and go back years later. So it's not as seen as such a negative as it was before. Let's see, Jessica. Oh, providing some good examples of cover letters. Yeah, that's a great idea too, Jessica. Thank you. How far back should your first job be? That's a great question, Megan. I recommend anything more than 15 years is sometimes too long. It depends though. If you've only been at one company for 15 years, let's say, you probably do want to include another example on your resume. But if you've had maybe 5 different jobs over 15 years, then that's sufficient experience that you want to convey in the resume. And then in that, other experience section, that's where you would want to create the other titles and companies that you've worked at. So yeah, definitely your last 5 years, probably 10, 15 in my opinion. Emma, my son's student and 21 years old is having a hard time moving from a retail position to get into an internship. What are your tips for someone at that stage? So, again, he's probably going up against a lot of different candidates, and I would recommend if he's in retail, I'd love to talk to you offline about that and even, talk to him about some tips for that stage. But being persistent is key. And so if he can continue to reach out to companies that he's applying for, that will set him apart, because oftentimes, people just apply and then they don't follow up or they don't keep pursuing the company. And so I would suggest that he continues to reach out, to different companies. Also, if a company hasn't advertised that they have an intern opening, it's not that they haven't thought about it maybe, but you certainly can still have him contact a company that doesn't have anything listed online, and it might give them the idea that they could benefit from having someone like him. So I think that hopefully helps answer that question. Tips for interviewing during furlough. Yes. What if the company asks about your current job and why you're searching? So yeah, a lot of people are in a furlough situation right now, unfortunately. And a furlough, for those of you who may not know yet, is a temporary leave of absence from the company because of COVID, for example. And it's not a layoff, but it's an in-between stage where, an employee is not certain if they're going to have a job at that company or not. So if a company you're interviewing with asks about your current job and why you're searching, you can certainly, be honest with them and tell them that you're in a furlough situation. And while you, love your company, you also are, needing to look for the next potential job because you are anxious to continue working and to be part of a team and, things like that. So honesty, in my opinion, is always best. You don't want to hide anything. and just be honest and you know, show your passion for the next company, and that like I said, you're still respecting the company you're with during the furlough by saying that you absolutely love them, but you also have to look out for yourself and your family. Let's see, will you be sending an email telling us how to take advantage of the webinar special to upgrade the resume writing package? Absolutely, yeah, I'll send that out. I'll send a follow-up email to everybody that attended with the recording and with the information on how to take advantage of the special. And then let's see, what else? Michelle is asking, can recruiters see a private Facebook page? I don't believe there is a way unless they're friends with you, right? Or if they have a friend that's friends with you and somehow they find that out. So I don't believe that there's any way they can see a private Facebook page. I always err on the side of, this is my rule in HR or in general for communication. Anything you send in an email, anything you post online, it could be seen on the news. That was one thing that my very first boss in HR shared with me. She said, I trust you, and I also want you to know that anything that you communicate via email, you post on a blog, you post on your own social media, whatever. Social media didn't exist back then, showing my age, but you know what I'm saying, like anything that was online could have been seen in news or in a court, right? And so that's always my approach, is just err on the side of safety with what you put out there. So let's see, what other questions? How many bullet points per job are effective? Great question, Christian. I would suggest 3 to 5. Any more than 5, and my eyes start to roll. I start to get a little bit bored when I'm looking at a resume, I'll just be honest. So keep it succinct. Make sure the bullet points that you do share have measurable results and are compelling. Let's see, a community page. Community page, Michelle, do you mean on Facebook, I think? I'm not sure about that. Let's talk offline about that. Let's see. Oh, great, Michelle. I'm so glad it's been helpful. Tina, can your boss see your recruiter setting and find out if you are looking? Potentially. So that's something to talk about, right? I don't know anyone right now that doesn't have a recruiter setting on. So you're on the same playing field with most people nowadays. So I don't think it would necessarily alert your boss if they did find that out. The reason that they could find that out is if you know, they're friends with HR and HR is looking for, you know, people, and they find you as a candidate on LinkedIn. They could potentially see that status set, but it would be probably rare. And honestly, like I said, everybody's looking or keeping their options open now, you know. Got to do what's best for you and your families. So yeah, good question. What else? You guys have great questions. I'm loving this. Should you include your resume on your LinkedIn profile? Great question. I absolutely would. There's no reason not to, and it is definitely beneficial. So the other thing with LinkedIn is make sure that your phone number is listed. A lot of people don't have their phone number that's available for the recruiter on the back end. It doesn't have to be published, you know, on the public LinkedIn setting, but make sure it's available on the back end so that recruiters can call you, and your email address as well. Should you include your LinkedIn profile link on your resume? Absolutely. Great question. Oftentimes before I even read a resume, if someone has their LinkedIn profile on their resume, I'd rather click on that, because then I see a really quick snapshot of who they might be connected with that I know. I can see their recommendations. You know, it just kind of gives me an interesting view of what they've done in a really quick way to just click on their profile. Let's see, how do you explain the many different job areas, paralegal to finance to business analyst? Awesome question, Wendy. This happens for a lot of people that have kind of, you know, jumped around in different job areas or positions. The executive summary that I talked about at the top of your resume is critical for that. So that'll be where you explain how, you know, all of those different skills that you've learned along the way. You position those in a way that makes sense to whatever job you're pursuing next. So I can talk to you offline about that too, but there's definitely a way that you can weave that all together. And by the way, that's one of my favorite things to do, is to help people understand how to make sense of their career path The awesome thing nowadays is that career paths aren't always just this linear, progression that we've taken. We've gone from different industries to being an entrepreneur, back to corporate, so, and myself included. And so it's really how you message that and how you leverage the experience you've had, and show a company what you've gained along the way. Is it appropriate to use the email address for my company that I own as my contact email? And that's a great question. If it's something that would be distracting to an employer, I'm trying to think for you. No, probably not, because it's not like your email address is Flowers by Anne, right? And so I would leave your email address, because it doesn't have anything that makes it stand out like it's a necessarily a florist, right? So good question on that. If you've been in several roles in the last few years, in each role about a year, does that look bad to recruiters and companies? Not necessarily anymore. This is why. With the gig economy, almost everybody I know has a side hustle or has, taken a role that is just better for them personally and financially. It makes more sense. And so nowadays that doesn't look as bad if there's progression in your career, or if you can explain why you've jumped the last few years. So as long as you can honestly and genuinely share your story, that will make sense to a recruiter. You don't have to be at a company for 20 years anymore. In fact, that's definitely not the norm. What are the other questions here? This may be a big question, but any tips for resume writing when one is changing industries after 20 years in an industry? Great question. So I definitely would recommend, making sure, again, the keywords that you're looking at for the new industry are embedded in the executive section somehow. And Christian, I'd be happy to talk to you offline about that. But definitely in the cover letter, that's where you can explain the reason that you're wanting to change industries after being in one industry for 20 years. But a lot of times it's just a given why people know you're probably wanting to look now for something different. You've done one thing for 20 years and you're wanting to have change. So you can talk about, even in that summary section, pursuing a change in industries because of my passion for nonprofit, or whatever it is, right, that you're pursuing. So hopefully that gives you an idea. Let's see. Did I get all the questions, you guys? I want to make sure. Oh, great. Jessica, you answered some questions. Awesome. All right. Monica, you're so welcome. I'm so glad this was helpful. And last slide here has my contact information. Y'all are welcome to contact me, email me. Our website for resume writing specifically is nvhrt.com. It lists the services out, and like I said, you can upgrade any package that you decide to pursue complimentary. So just know that that is available to you. I will reach out and send you guys, the information like I talked about. Let's see, what other questions? Did I get all the open questions answered? I think so. Oh, you guys, it was so fun. I love this. I really want to encourage you all that even though they're hard times, I'm starting to see positions open up. I'm starting to see that there's a change as, cities and states are starting to open up a little bit, that companies aren't nearly as afraid to recruit and hire as they used to be, even, a couple weeks ago. So just know that I see a positive change. It's kind of like a snow globe that, the whole economy has been just shaken up, and now things are going to start to settle, and it'll be interesting. Jobs are going to look different. Industries are going to look different. And that's okay. Change is good. And I know it's hard. It's hard on so many levels. And also, I just want to encourage you that there's going to be really, great opportunities that do exist for so many of you. So I'm glad that you all attended. If there's anything specifically you have questions on, please do feel free to email me, and we'll go from there. All right, you guys, have a great day. Thanks again. We'll do this again soon. Bye.